Good morning, folks. My name is Curtis Chandler, President of PFL. We hope that everyone enjoyed the short week last week, and we sincerely hope that you are enjoying our early morning briefing. We are live 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday. If you are viewing this podcast through our reports and are up at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Mondays, please tune in next week live instead. Please like us on LinkedIn and follow us and pass on the good word. We would certainly appreciate it. And you could win a PFL Railcar. Please visit www.pflpetroleum.com for further details on our next giveaway. PFL has over 1,120 followers with the objective to get to 1,500 followers by the end of Q1 21. Stay tuned to PFL for the latest and greatest. Our weekly quote this week is from Ralph Nader. Ralph is an American political activist, author, lecturer, lawyer, and former candidate for the President of the United States. Noted for his involvement in consumer protection, environmentalism, and government reform causes. Ralph Nader once said, "The function of leadership is to produce more leaders, not followers." Folks, that is so true. If you are in a leadership role in your organization, you need to produce more leaders so that they can think on their own and not follow your every move. That to me is how business moves forward. New U.S. jobless claims. The number of Americans seeking unemployment benefits fell slightly last week to 900,000 people. This is still historically a high level that points to ongoing job cuts and in the raging coronavirus pandemic that we're now in. The government said 5 million Americans are continuing to receive state jobless benefits, down from 5.2 million in the previous week. More than 10 million people are receiving aid from the extended programs, which now offers up to 50 weeks of benefits, or a new program provides benefits to contractors and self-employed. Overall, nearly 16 million people were on unemployment in the week that ended January 2nd. Which is the latest period for which data is available. The Dow closed lower on Friday of last week, down 179.03 points, closing out the week at 30,996.98 points, up 182.72 points week over week. The S&P closed lower on Friday last week as well, down 11.6 points, closing out the week at 3,768.25 points, up 73.22 points week over week. The NASDAQ composite bucking the trend on Friday closed higher on Friday of last week, up 12.15 points, closing out the week at 13,543.06 points, up a whopping 544.56 points week over week. The tech sector is doing good, folks. In overnight trading, Dow futures traded lower and expected to open up flat this morning. The Dow is currently down a mere 4 points. WTI oil for February delivery fell 86 cents to $52.27 a barrel on Friday of last week, down 9 cents per barrel week over week. Brent crude for March delivery fell 69 cents a barrel to $55.41 a barrel, up 31 cents a barrel week over week. U.S. commercial oil inventories increased by 4.4 million barrels from the previous week. at 486,600,000 barrels. U.S. crude inventories are 9% above the 5-year average for this time of year. Total motor gasoline inventories decreased by 300,000 barrels last week and are 3% below the 5-year average for this time of year. First time we've seen a negative number in gasoline inventories, folks, in a long time. Finished gasoline inventories increased while blending component inventories decreased last week. Distillate fuel inventories increased by 500,000 barrels last week and are 8% above the 5-year average for this time of year. Propane and propylene inventories decreased by 6.2 million barrels last week and are 11% below the 5-year average for this time of year. Total commercial petroleum inventories decreased by 700,000 barrels last week. U.S. crude oil imports averaged 6 million barrels per day last week, down by 194,000 barrels per day from the previous week. Over the past 4 weeks, crude oil imports averaged approximately 5.7 million barrels per day, which is nearly 12% less than the same 4-week period last year, where we averaged 11.8% below. Including both finished and gasoline blendings component, last week averaged 504,000 barrels per day, and distillate fuel imports averaged 460,000 barrels per day. Oil is slightly higher in overnight trading, and WTI is poised to open at $52.62 a barrel, up 35 cents per barrel from Friday's close. In regards to North America rail traffic, carloads in week 2 increased by 7.1% compared to the same period last year and increased by 3.2% sequentially. Total U.S. carrier traffic was up 4.1% year over year, and total Canadian carrier traffic was up roughly 20%. CN and CP increased the most year over year at 21% and 17.7% respectively. Some pretty big numbers for the Canadian railroads. The largest percentage increase were agriculture products by 27.5%, followed by intermodal traffic at 13.6%. Coal was the largest percentage decrease and was down by 14.2%, followed by non-metallic minerals and products, which were down 10.7% year over year. On a 4-week rolling basis, carloads are up 4.2% and up 4.8% in Q1. North America rig count is up by 16 rigs week over week. The U.S. gained 5 rigs week over week. The U.S. currently has 370 active rigs. Canada's rig count was up by 11 rigs week over week, and Canada's overall rig count is 172 active rigs out there looking for oil and gas. Year over year, we are down 488 rigs collectively. Still a pretty big number, folks. A few things that we're keeping an eye on. Well, number one, executive orders. President Biden has already signed 30 executive orders in only 3 days into his presidency. one of which really made Canadians angry, as President Biden called for a halt of construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. Even the Teamsters Union here in the United States are upset and said in a statement on Wednesday of last week, quote, "The Teamsters strongly oppose yesterday's decision and we would urge the administration to reconsider it. This executive order doesn't just affect us Teamsters, it hurts our Canadian brothers and sisters as well as who work on this project. It will reduce good-paying union jobs that allow workers to provide a middle-class standard of living to their families. America needs access to various forms of energy that can keep its economy running in the years ahead. This decision will hurt that effort." End of quotation. Calgary-based TC Energy announced Wednesday morning of last week it was suspending the development. The decision will lead to thousands of workers losing their jobs. Keystone XL was designed to ship 830,000 barrels per day of crude oil southward, connecting the oil sands in Canada with the world's third largest proven oil reserves to the U.S. Gulf Coast. The question now that no one is asking is what happens next? There is significant infrastructure already used. There is unused pipe scattered all over North America. Does TC Energy leave the infrastructure in place in hopes of a more favorable administration 4 years down the road? Does the legal battle continue? Is Biden done with shutting down pipelines? Is Energy Transfer's Dakota Access Pipeline next? What about Enbridge Line 5? Folks, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and we don't think the ramifications of the decision to suspend construction on the Keystone XL pipeline was thought through thoroughly. Since the Keystone XL pipeline makes perfect sense, it would not surprise us to see it come back and built at some point. However, in the meantime, the decision by Biden creates a significant tailwind for crude by rail as the price for crude rises and basis differentials in Canada cooperate, which we expect as production is continuing to outstrip the available pipeline capacity up there. Bottom line, folks, stay tuned to PFL for the latest and greatest. We're following this one very closely. We're watching drilling permits. President Biden made good on his promise to suspend drilling permits on federal land. The Biden administration announced Thursday of last week a 60-day suspension on new oil and gas leasing and drilling permits for U.S. lands and waters as officials moved quickly to reverse the Trump administration policies on energy and the environment. The order also applies to coal leases and permits and blocks the approval of new mining plans, land sales or exchanges, and the hiring of senior level staff at the agency were also suspended. What does this mean for the American consumer? Well, get ready to pay more at the pumps. With no new drilling in the U.S., we'll certainly import more foreign oil and put ourselves back in the position of being at the mercy of countries that don't particularly like us. The American Petroleum Institute President and CEO Mike Summers said in a statement of Friday last week, quote, "Restricting development on federal lands and waters is nothing more than an import more oil policy. Energy demand will continue to rise, especially as the economy recovers, and we can choose to produce that energy here in the United States or rely on foreign countries hostile to American interests. With this move, the administration is leading us towards more reliance on foreign energy from countries with lower environmental standards and risks to hundreds of thousands of jobs and billions in government revenue for education and conservation programs. We stand ready to engage the Biden administration on ways to address America's energy challenges, but impeding American energy will only serve to hurt local communities, hamper Americans' economic recovery. Without access to energy development on federal lands and waters, API's recent analysis shows that U.S. energy supply will shift to foreign sources, cost nearly 1 million American jobs, increase CO2 emissions, and reduce revenue that funds education and key conservation programs. API represents all segments of America's natural gas and oil industry, which supports more than 10 million U.S. jobs and is backed by a growing grassroots movement of millions of Americans. Speaking of importing more foreign oil, Iran has started ramping up its production and expects to reach pre-sanctioned levels in 1 to 2 months, said Deputy Oil Minister Ammar Hossein Zamamini. The oil market will be able to accommodate Iran's maximum oil output of 4 million barrels a day, Zamini told reporters on the sidelines of an oil conference in Tehran on Friday of last week. Iran has been subject to tough U.S. sanctions since 2018 when President Donald Trump unilaterally withdrew from an international deal that restricted Iran's nuclear activities. Iran's crude production has been below 2 million barrels a day for most of 2020, according to data compiled by Bloomberg. President Joe Biden, who took office last week, is expected to seek the restoration of that accord, and officials in Tehran have expressed the hope he will ease restrictions on its petroleum sales. But for now, the sanctions are still in place, and any buyer of Iranian crude would face the same legal and financial penalties that have deterred most potential customers over the past few years. However, we expect President Biden to look the other way or cut a new deal in short order with Iran so they can export their 4 million barrels a day of crude. Well, that's all for this week's podcast, folks. We hope to see you next Monday. PFL has been extremely active in railcar storage, leases, and all railcar related activities. Please make sure to check out our reports just posted at pflpetroleum.com, and of course call us with any questions, comments that you may have. We're here to troubleshoot any situation that you're in. We hope you all have a great week, and thanks for listening to today.